I'm starting. That thumbs up means everything's being recorded now. Okay, everything's being recorded. Although they can't hear all this jabbering going on. They only hear me anyway. No, they only hear me. They can't. It used to be we had to use a cell phone. They could hear everything going. Okay, so not that way anymore. Much better now. You've been gone for a while.
Yeah.
But you're back.
I'm back.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
A lot of things going here.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're on Proverbs 17. We got some really good Proverbs to look at. They're really nice ones. And then some are not so nice ones. Proverbs. First one's a good one. Fortunately, we're not doing verse 5. We're doing verse 6. Verse 5 was a bad one. Last week we had a lot of discussion on it. It's not a bad proverb. It's just more negative in focus. But this next one, children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children. All right, so as far without actually looking at verse word by word look at here is just a general concept. What's the general concept? Is family. Okay, that's your general concept. Family, not just immediate family, but the next generation and then the next generation. Okay, so as you look at this, of course, Solomon. He has 1,000 wives, so he has plenty of family. But it's just crazy for him. But actually, though, if you look at it, do look at one word here. I think that's really important to look at. Two words, actually. The direct, is that the proper grammar? Yeah. The direct object of each phrase. What's the direct object of each phrase? Do you know what your grammar? You do know your grammar. Hey, do you want anything or not? Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious how many people actually know their grammar. Okay. Direct object. The direct object means what? Has this gone anywhere? Has it gone this way? Okay. The receiver of the action. Okay, the indirect object would be the parent, to the aged or of their children. That's the possessive. Okay, but so look at those terms, crown and pride. All right, now we saw this a while back in chapter 12, verse 4 with the woman of valor, the wife of valor or noble character is her husband's crown. So in this case, who's the crown? Children or grandchildren even. All right, and Ms. Lily over there. All right, so the grandchildren, but it's the children, and then parents are the pride of their children. So the parents are the pride of their children in that case. All right. So in this case, you kind of look at it in just this wonderful setup. When God created Adam and Eve and gave them children, the first institution He created was the family. The family is meant to be the most important institution in all of society. And when the family functions properly, the children are the crown. What does it mean to be the crown, even children's children? The crown of their parents or the aged. Where do you wear a crown? On your head. So that means you are displaying them. So your children are not, if the children are raised properly, the children are not a disgrace to their parents. The children and the children's children show that the parents and grandparents have truly been godly people and have raised their children properly so that the children now are what people see. And when people see the children, what are they to think of about the parents? What great parents. I mean, is that how it worked in your family? Okay. No, that's true, though. Long time ago, on a Mother's Day, because it happened to fit the text, too, what's the best compliment you can give a mother? Not that you look so young, even though you're an old lady, but what the best compliment is, what good children you have. Best compliment you can give a mom, right? Okay? Not what beautiful children, but what good children you have. They behave properly. And they're respectful and all that. That's what this verse is kind of saying, isn't it? Now, it's not just mothers, though, and this is parents. And so it's emphasizing how important it is to raise the children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, as Paul says, but to value that more than anything in life, so that when you look back, and not when you look back, when other people look at you and your family, they look at your children and they say, they must have good parents and good grandparents. Okay? And then even the children the parents are the pride of their children, so even the children recognize, I got good mom and dad. Okay? And so it's a mutual thing. So that's why I thought, and for me, one of the times, it's not, sometimes it doesn't work this way, but often it does in our church, it does. One of the times we actually see that is actually at a funeral, when the one who died is the matriarch or patriarch of a really godly family. You can see it not in the grieving, but you can see it in the respect and in the togetherness, the bond that's found in the family. And that's kind of cool when you see that. Okay? Another way to look at this too, though, is not contrary to it, is how Paul refers to it in 1 Timothy 5, which you don't need to go there unless you want to, is about caring for widows. Okay, in the church. Okay, why does the church care for widows? Or James even says religion that God accepts is that looks after who? Orphans and widows. That's what James says, looks after orphans and widows. So in this case, what's the family? The church. The church is the family. And so another way is, how do people acknowledge whether a church is one way? There's several ways, of course, by right doctrine's one of them. The other way is, how does society acknowledge whether a church is a truly loving church? Is how they take care of their own, and particularly their own who are in need. So that's what Paul's in 1 Timothy is with the widows, because in that society, widows often had nothing, and so will you take care of your own? Do you show mercy? Do you have a mercy ministry to those in need? So that's what this verse is. Just a really awesome verse. I know it's pretty narrow in that, but like we point out with a lot of the Proverbs, they are just a statement, and the statement can be expanded. It's not meant to be just narrowly interpreted. It's meant to be, okay, how does this apply in various levels and various contexts? So it applies in the immediate family, but it certainly applies in the church family. And how does the church work together and care for their own? Okay, that's all I got on that one. We don't spend a whole lot of time on one because we got to keep moving, right? All right, so now moving on. Now we get not anything pleasant in the next one. So if you hadn't, those who hadn't done this study, the Proverbs are not arranged in any specific order. They're just random. Whoever put them together, Solomon spoke them, but whoever arranged them just put them there. So they're not always arranged in any order. So the next one has nothing to do with what we just said. And so it says arrogant lips, or if you have it other than the NIV translation, does it say something different than arrogant lips? Fine speech. Excellent. Yeah, excellent speech. Okay, and actually, that's really what it's looking at. Arrogant can be an acceptable translation, apparently, but it actually is more literally. It would be one who speaks too much. One who just loves to talk, eloquent speaker, but he thinks he's eloquent. He just loves to talk. Okay, so arrogant, or the lips that love to talk are unsuited to a fool. All right, a fool is one who certainly does not fear God and does not have any redeeming value in what he says, but he doesn't believe that. He thinks everything he says is just wonderful, and so he's just going to share with you whatever he thinks, and he's just going to ramble on and on about not just silly stuff, but about stuff that's not right, and just goes on and on. And so that's what it's saying. So the person who speaks too much, those kind of lips is unsuited for a fool, because you're going to get one later about. Look at the very last verse if you want to. We'll get to it next week or 2 weeks later, who knows. The last verse of this one. So the first one says arrogant lips or eloquent lips or excessive lips are unsuited to a fool, whereas verse 28, even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent and discerning if he holds his tongue. All right, so that's the one where it says, how do we say it in the modern proverb? If you're not sure if someone's a fool or not, just wait and see. Till they open their mouth. Yeah, that's right. Then you'll know. If they are, and they may not be, but then you'll know, though, if they are or not, okay, by what they speak. So that's the first half. But the point of this proverb is really the second part, how much worse lying lips to a ruler. Said, as bad as it is to have a fool who just keeps rambling on about stuff that's actually foolish, not just silly stuff, what's even worse is if you have a ruler who has lying lips, lips that speak that are not advantageous and beneficial to the nation, to the people. That's the worst thing. That truly is the worst thing. Cancer has been cured. Cancer? How do we know that now? There we going with this. Okay. He did? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So I know you had to bring that out. Okay. All right. But a more general concept that goes with what Jesus says: He who has much, finish the sentence. Much is required of him. All right, that's what Solomon's saying. If you have a position of leadership, so you're not a king. None of us are kings, but you're king of your own house. You're king of a company, or whatever. Your lips better be speaking truth, because you have a responsibility to those that you are below you, just as far as rank. But you have a responsibility to them, and you need to honor and accept that responsibility and take it seriously. Okay, go ahead. What do you have a question? Right, let me see. Yeah, right. Well, I'm seeing, okay. Let's see. He says not appropriate, or not appropriate. That's what the word more literally means. The word is, are not fitting, not appropriate, not fitting.
That kind of talk would be indicative of
Well, yeah. Okay. But but the key is actually what is that? The word for lips producing excess. Okay. He says that the word can actually refer to beautiful or fitting or appropriate. So it can be a word that just that word itself can be a person who can speak eloquently.
Says eloquent lips are not suitable.
Yeah. So the word for that excessive talking can be a person who's a very eloquent speaker. And for example, Apollos in the New Testament, he was known as a speaker. Paul would talk about that. I don't have eloquent words like Apollos. And he's not being critical of Apollos because they were buddies, but he says, I can't speak that way. I'm not trained in rhetoric or anything like that. And this one is saying someone can be like that, but if what he says is just utter foolishness, you don't want nothing to do with that. That seems to be what this is getting at. Okay. So again, more so though is the second. The first part's there, but it's really leading to the second part, meaning that the worst kind of speech is the one who has authority. So if you're in any sort of position of authority, watch how you speak. Not just is it proper, don't use bad language, but is it words that are truthful and honest and constructive, those kind of things. That's what that's referring to. Moving on, a bribe is a charm to the one who gives it. Wherever he turns, he succeeds. Okay, now what's funny about this is just a statement, right? And just reading it, does it sound like he's endorsing bribery? Obviously he's not, because there's a law in the Mosaic Law, apparently in Exodus 23:8, where taking a bribe is proscribed, not prescribed, proscribed by the law. And so it's not saying that a person should be doing this, but what is it really saying is that the person who gives a bribe is self-deluded, is how he says it. I say he, the commentator here. He says he's self-deluded. In his eyes, when he gives the bribe, he's giving something that he thinks will work out for his advantage. And temporarily it may. But he really thinks he's getting by with something. He's really thinking this is going to work out to his advantage. But ultimately, he's only deceiving himself. He may get by with it for a while. We know people in history that give bribes and get by with stuff, and he thinks he may get by with it for a while. So it's a charm. That's what the idea is. That a bribe is a charm to the ones who gives it. He thinks he's going to succeed in doing this, but of course, I know the Proverbs literally doesn't say it, but ultimately God's righteous judgment will counteract the giving of the bribe. All right, so it will not succeed in the end. All right? So don't think you can bribe that police officer when you get pulled over, okay? Just, you tried it, okay? A donut? Donut? You want a donut? We got plenty of donuts, well.
Have you seen the Trunk Monkey series?
No. No. What is it called? The Trunk?
Trunk Monkey.
Trunk Monkey.
From about 20 years ago. It was a dealership out in Washington State.
Okay.
And when you have that in your context, you understand.
Oh, okay. So if anyone's listening, they have to look it up, all right? Trunk Monkeys commercials. Out of Washington?
Yeah, it's out of Washington State.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's get to something more redeeming here. Okay, he who covers over an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. This is a very, very important proverb in all time, but certainly is in our time. He who covers over an offense promotes love. Now, James will refer to this at the very end of his epistle, by the way. Last two verses of his epistle, he refers to this proverb. But what does it mean to cover over something? To hide it, which means no one knows. It's hidden. No one knows. All right, so let's put this into just a really practical context. Say someone has done something wrong. I mean, it's a bad thing. They've done something wrong. They confess to you they've done wrong, and they repented of that. Now, if they don't repent of it, then it's a different matter. But in this case, they repented of their sin. They've done something wrong, and they either they did it to you, or they did it, and they confess it to me, or just to you as a Christian. Okay, what do you do with that? You never mention it again. You bury it. Yeah, I thought you said very. Okay. You bury it. You bury it. You never repeat it again. That's what covering over an offense means. It's done. That's what God does. He never brings up our sins ever again. We do it all the time. We uncover them. We dig them up. But He never does. And if someone does confess to you a sin, you never share it, ever. And when it's done, it's done. And you say nothing more about the sin ever again, because it's done. It's been redeemed by Christ. In the New Testament context, it's been redeemed by Christ, and thus it's as if it never happened. So why are you mentioning something that didn't happen? Okay, because it's been redeemed. All right, so how important is that? Because how often do we not do that? How often do we remember these sins, or remember someone else's, or love to hear the gossip about someone else's sins, and we will love to share that with other people. All right, so that's what it means, though, that you cover over sin, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. So if someone has done this and said, oh my gosh, do you know what so-and-so did? And then you start sharing it, and then suddenly you lost a friend, right? Because as soon as word gets out that the person who confessed to you finds out that you shared that with someone else, you lost a friend. Because that person will never trust you again with anything. So sins confessed and repented and confessed, repented of and confessed are forgiven and not. You can't forget anything, but forgiven and covered. You never mention them again. And never do you ever treat that person differently. Again, it's as if it didn't even happen. That person is as perfect as you are, okay? Or as redeemed and forgiven as you are. And thus it never gets brought up again. So what you do, now, and you think about this, because what happens if you cover our offense? What are you doing? The end of that first line says. Yeah, you're forgiving, but how's the line says it? You are forgiving, and then what are you doing?
Love.
Yeah, you're promoting love, right? You don't promote love if you keep reminding them of their sin, okay? But what promoting love, and how I understand this, is like this. The sin's done, it's been forgiven, now it's in the past. It never is brought up in the present. So as you move on in the present, you move on without the sin, and you move on in love. And so as you move on in love, you move on in forgiveness, you're moving on in love, and then you are working together again as if nothing ever happened to separate you. It's a great proverb. It's one, though, that we often have trouble, particularly if someone's really done something bad to you. I mean, really, something really, really bad. It's going to be really hard. And I've had a number of people over time who says, I can't get past this. And it's like, well, I know you can't. You can with help. You need to rely upon God, and you need to understand that as long as you dwell on it, no one's benefiting. If you dwell on it, that person's still in their misery because they confessed, meaning they acknowledge they've done wrong. They're really sorry for it. You keep them in their misery because you won't let them get out of it. Then you're in misery because you still hold it over them, and you hate that too. And now no one's happy, and there is no love, and there's no peace, and no one's moving on. Whereas Christ comes along and, he's the Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. And I'm ready to move on with this. And to the point that when you get to Easter and beyond, and he confronts Peter, he never reminds him of the sin. I mean, there's that moment where he says, do you love me more than these? But he never says, because you once said you did and you didn't. He never says why he says that. He never brings it up. And he says, let's move on. And so as we move on, this is how we move on. We move on in love. You got a job to do. You got to feed my sheep and feed my lambs and shepherd my sheep. You got a job to do. Let's do it. We can't do it if we're dwelling on the past. You can only do it if you're moving on. And you can only do that with God. That's why I know some things are really hard to let go of, and that's why I said, well, if you're really having trouble with it, then you need God. You need to pray more and more about it and seek His strength and power and forgiveness. Yeah.
Or even when Jesus is forgiving Peter, he's not making a show of it.
That's the other, yes.
The other disciples didn't know that Peter had denied Jesus, and so he didn't bring up specifically.
Yeah, he's not rubbing Peter's nose in front of everybody else. Right.
But he's still
Right.
forgiving him for all of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's an important thing too, because so often when people do share with someone else, they're basically trying to shame the other person in front of other people, so that the other person, particularly if you're in a small church or a small community or something like that, they can't even really show their face anymore, because everyone's going to be thinking about that. And you're the one to blame for that because you shared it. See, so now that person is forgiven by God, but now you have the burden, and even if you don't accept it, you have the burden or the guilt upon you because you shared it. What God said, don't share. This is where God says, don't share it. You keep it a secret. As juicy as it may be, you keep it a secret because you're going to ruin people if you share it. And you don't want Satan to win in this. Yeah.
I think also on that, whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. The statement that is being made, whoever, like, I've sinned against you, you've forgiven me, and if you repeat it, then we're separating our friendship by it. But if I continue to not necessarily just repeat the sin, but to bring up, hey, that time you forgive me about it, like, man, I'm real sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, okay.
Also, an aspect of whoever.
Yeah, whoever repeats the matter separates. Here be like this. Let's say the sin, I sinned against you in a bad way, but it wasn't a private. Other people knew about it. And so, but I confessed and then asked for forgiveness, and you've forgiven. But your other acquaintances, your friends, says, how can you forgive him for that? How can you still be, friends with him, okay? Or married to him or whatever. How can you still do that? If that were me, I would never forgive him. And so that person is trying to put a wedge between us. And that person's trying to separate close friends, because the other person who really has no interest in it at all is getting involved and say, you can't do that. Why are you forgiving him? Why are you letting him off the hook? Well, after what he did for you. Make him suffer. That kind of stuff. And it's like, no, that's exactly what this is denouncing. Right. Could be anybody. Yeah.
Any person in the transaction.
Yeah. Anyone who's aware of it. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that is a good thing. I'm glad you said that, because that can happen. I don't know when it has, but it can happen in a church where someone has committed a sin. It's a public sin, and actually against another person, but the other person has forgiven, but the rest of the church, or others, not maybe the whole church, but others in the church says, no, we don't want that person in our church. And they shun them, cold shoulder them, and all that kind of stuff. And those people are at fault, because it's not theirs to hold on to that sin. It's been forgiven by God and even by the person who's been offended. And so it's to be moved on from. Bad sentence there, dangling parts. Okay, you move on from it, though. There we go. All right, moving on. So But that was a very, very powerful proverb. All right, the next one. A rebuke impresses a man of discernment more than 100 lashes of fool. All right, I got an illustration on this one, and to see how you go with this. It's not a bad one. It's just a historical illustration. I mentioned a while back in children's message. I read this book, biggest book I read, 788 pages on Admiral Nelson, Lord Nelson. Okay. But it ended before he died, before the Battle of Trafalgar and all these things. It was just the first half of his life. I thought, what a wasted book. I wanted to see how the rest turned out. But it ended there. All right, but that's not my point of mentioning. The point of mentioning is that he was on the ship. His whole life, when he was like 9 years old. Can you imagine sending your son off to the British Navy when like 9 years old to be on a ship, and the rest of her life, that's where he's going to be. All right, so on those ships, it was pretty brutal in the British Navy in those days, 1800s. For offenses, what did they do to sailors who did wrong? They flogged them. They lashed. But how did they do it? They lashed him to the mast, and then they flogged him. And they made where was everybody else? Everyone had to watch. Why? Yeah, well, yeah, disciplinary, but why does everyone have to watch? You'll be the next one if you do the same thing he did. So that's the kind of an illustration on that. A rebuke impresses a man of discernment. That person's being flogged. Do I want to do what that person did? I don't think I want to, okay? Or else I will get flogged too. So if you're a discerning person, I'll take note of what happened to that guy who wasn't discerning and did the wrong thing, so I won't do that. That's my illustration on this. Whereas people are still getting flogged because the other ones are the fools and keep doing it. Okay, what?
I have a
Better illustration. You can top that?
punishment I would get from my mother was Saturday morning when all had jobs to do. And if you didn't get yours done, her punishment was for me to sit on a pillow and watch her do it. And then pray that my dad didn't come.
And you actually never, you did something, you didn't always do your work? I mean, really? Most of the time. No, yeah. But that's the concept behind this, all right? So you learn from someone else's mistakes.
It was a rebuke. It wasn't a spanking. She didn't spank me.
Okay.
Used force. But oh my goodness, I felt like an awful person.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Somebody with a
Go ahead.
conscientious person.
Uh-huh.
You say, just that look you get.
Yeah.
That's enough.
That would be the man of discernment.
That conscientious person, you don't have to be, that hurts 100 times worse.
Yes.
That pointed look at somebody. That's what I took it.
Oh, that perfect Andy Griffith illustration. Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. The perfect one is one of the heartbreaking scenes in the Andy Griffith show is when the track meet won and Opie that can't win a medal. Barney's training him, and he can't win a gold or blue ribbon or whatever. He can't win a thing. In fact, he gets last. Okay, remember? And then he goes home, he sits on the couch, and he just pouts. And of course, Andy's trying to tell him, you need to go congratulate your friends and all that. You're being a sore loser. He said, I'm not going to do it because they took my prize or my medal. They took my prize. And Andy's words were, I'm disappointed in you. That was all it took. That's all he had to hear. He didn't have to punish Opie because he didn't want to disappoint his dad. That's what you're saying. Did not want to disappoint his dad. All right, so that's the person of discernment. The fool has got to just keep whipping that kid. Okay? That's what's going on here. They still never learn. They have that proud look. That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. Do it some more. That didn't hurt. And in that book on Admiral Nelson, the book with Admiral Nelson, they said that often it took only one scourging to keep a person in line. But some of them, they didn't care if they got, and there's various levels of punishment for various offenses. They could go up to 100. They didn't care. They would just do it again. But the other thing, a reason why I mention that is because they didn't want to kill the sailor. I mean, even if really frustrated, why? They needed him on the ship. And if he's not there, someone else has to pick up his slack. So that's why the other sailors, sometimes the other sailors are like, yeah, lash this guy because he's slacking and we need him to get his job done because otherwise we can't get done. And you're on a warship, and if you're not doing your job right, our lives are in jeopardy. Yes. Oh.
I was just gonna say that's exactly what the phrase "whipping boy" was.
Oh, whipping boy. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think the original sense of it is some
Royalty.
kid had another kid that was alongside him, and every time he did something bad,
They whipped the boy. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That was awful. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, the reason the disappointed one works is because of the first proverb that you went over today.
Oh, children's. Yes. Yes.
It doesn't work if you don't love your parents or respect your parents.
And that's at the end of the show. Opie comes to the sheriff's office and says, I don't want you to be disappointed. It's cool. It's a really cool. So this actually got more discussion on that than I thought we would. But that was a really cool thing. Okay. So all right, moving on to the next one. An evil man is bent only on rebellion. A merciless official will be sent against him. All right, this is obviously a negative one too. This is one though. An evil man is bent only on rebellion. We're talking evil. You always have to be careful about this. It's not just a good guy, a righteous person who fell. This is a person who totally is evil and only wants to do evil, does not want to walk in God's ways by any means at all. His entire bend or his entire mindset is, what can I do that's wrong? And how can I usurp the authorities or whatever it can? How can I get by with stuff that's wrong? I want to do evil. All right. So, but what's going to happen to him in the rest of this proverb? Who's going to go after him? The merciless official, the one who has the authority, the hangman or the torturer, okay, is going to go after him. And he'll be sent by the king himself. And that evil man, he's either going to get in line, which he probably won't, or he's going to suffer miserably and perhaps die, because that's the only way it can do it. I had an illustration on this one too. You know, a while back when we tried to help out this inmate that I was visiting in prison for a long time, and he had a parole hearing at one point, and he asked me to sit with him during that. And that was a scary experience. I was scared, and I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, I was scared. Those the parole board, they are the most merciless people you'll ever find. Oh my gosh! If you try to come up, first of all, they told me don't talk to him during this. They're telling me, I'm shaking. They're telling me don't talk to him, don't even look at him. Okay, we will ask you what we want you to know, what we want to know from you, but otherwise you don't do a thing. Okay, don't do anything to indicate anything to him or anything like that. And then they just grilled him. Okay, and if he tried to come up with excuses for what he did, oh, they had no mercy. I hate to say it this way, but I looked at, there's two women and a man, and I looked and they had wedding rings on. I thought, man, I hate to be married to you. I thought, if you're like this, I mean, what if your spouse does? Oh my gosh, I mean, it's the line, okay? But that's the law. But honestly, they did their job. That's the law. There's no mercy in the law. It's not meant to have mercy. Mercy's mercy, law's law, and that's what this is getting at. If a guy you do the crime, you do the time. Now, I know justice isn't always working right, but that's what this is getting at. You do the crime, you do the time, there is no mercy for that. Now, the only mercy is forgiveness, and that's, okay. I would assume if you worked in a prison, you would understand that. Yeah, I know you worked in the prison, right? Because all of them are innocent, right? Every inmate thinks he's innocent. Yeah, and it's not my fault, or it's not what you said I did. It was not that bad, or that kind of stuff. Yeah, cold and heartless, no mercy. That's what this proverb is getting at, though. And so there is a time when you don't cover over offense, and that's when the person is evil, bent on doing evil. You don't cover over those offenses. That's when a merciless official needs to be sent and punish and stop. If it means, punish maybe locking them up for good or hanging them or whatever, however they executed, something like that. That's what it would be. Okay, next one. This is a fun one. Better to meet a bear robbed of her cubs than a fool in his folly. Now, isn't that just funny? Okay, because you all know about that, right? If you see a mother bear with her 2 cubs, don't you dare get near those cubs, right? You're in big trouble because that mother bear has no mercy on you, all right? Okay? Okay, but what's even worse than that is a fool in his folly. Okay, and he doesn't even elaborate on how that's worse. Do you have any ideas? I didn't have any more on that. I just thought it stands on its own. But it's just the worst. A fool caught up in his. Here he says, yet even that is not as dangerous as encountering a fool caught up in his stupidity, spreading mayhem and destruction in the lives of those around him. All right, so I don't know. Meaning that bear robbed of her cub would be pretty bad, but. All right, so, and I know, as we were saying this, but by the way, none of us are fools, because a fool is someone who's totally rejected God and wants nothing to do with him. So we may act kind of silly, so this doesn't apply to any of us, okay? This is a true fool who is totally devoid of God and the morality and the conscience that God has in our lives. This is someone that has nothing to do with that. All right, if a man pays back evil for good, evil will never leave his house. All right, a good illustration on this one, perfect illustration, is the unforgiving servant in Matthew 18. He owes the master the king 10,000 talents, and the king has mercy on him and forgives the debt. And he goes out and finds another guy who owes him 100 denarii, which is 100 days' wages, and he shakes him and chokes him and all that. Says, "Pay what you owe." And the guy says, "I can't, give me time." And the guy says, "No, I want it now." And he throws him in jail. Right. So then, what happens to that guy? Not the second guy, but the initial guy, the original one. He gets thrown back to the king, okay, because he said, "I showed mercy on you. Can you not show mercy on someone else?" And now he says, "Okay, now to the torturers you go until you pay off all that you owe me," which you could never pay because 10,000 talents would take. They had to figure out in one of these commentaries. It's kind of fun doing it. How many thousands of lifetimes it would take to pay that off. Okay, because it's just a huge amount, and so that's the idea. So I guess for us, the warning for us would be, if the line. Well, he started it. You can't use that line. Okay, he started. I'll end it. The fight. He started. I'll end it. It's like, don't pay back evil for good. Paul talks about. Peter does too. Do not repay back evil for evil, but with the blessing. Okay, that you may inherit a blessing. Okay, okay. So it's the one. If someone's done evil to you, you do not have the freedom or the justification, I guess you should say. You don't have the justification to do evil in return. But how often do we do that? Okay, it's so often. So this is a good proverb to take to heart. But what will happen is if you keep doing that, the rest of the proverb, there's evil will never leave his house. If this is your mindset, I'm going to get back at those people for what they did to me. That's how you're going to live your life, and your whole life will be consumed by that, doing evil to those who've done evil to you. And you're ruining your house, you ruin your life, you ruin everything around you. So let's go back to he who covers over offense promotes love instead. The next one fits this one. Starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam, so drop the matter before dispute breaks out. Okay. Now, breaching a dam is coming over the top of it, right? Now he says starting a quarrel is like doing that. What does that mean? You guys want to figure out what it means? Yeah, so what does it mean, though? Starting a quarrel is like doing that. It's like just flooding it. Yeah, because if you start it, yeah, the other person responds to you, and then it just keeps gushing out, right? And gushing over the dam, all right? So if only we would apply this proverb into our own situations, to ourselves in our own situations, we'd be much better off. It's like, so if there's something that you think, you're pretty upset about it, he says, do you really want to get into a fight over this? This isn't really just picking your fights kind of thing, like, we often say. This is, do you really want to get in a fight over this? Do you want to quarrel over this? Because if you do, the dam's broke and everything's going, and it won't stop. It's just, you start it, and like you said, I'll say something, then the other person you're mad at, they get defensive now all of a sudden. They say something. There's going to be another one about this, by the way, in verse 19. They'll get that way too, and it just keeps going and going. And then you flooded the whole area. You ruined everything. Everything's just destroyed. What? The snowball effect's another way of saying it. Yes, exactly. That's a good way of saying it too. It just keeps rolling and rolling, getting bigger and bigger and worse and worse. Right? All right. So the idea is simply to ask yourself. And this is important to do this because I think, when I tell you what it is, you're going to know some people are this way. Do you prefer peace in your life, or do you actually like conflict? Some people actually like to argue. Okay? Ask yourself that. And if you are that kind of a person, are you breaching a dam every time you start talking? Because of this, yeah, exactly. And it started a little thing, right? It started a little thing, and then it went bigger and bigger. It's like snowball in that case, and it just gets bigger and bigger. Because you have your pride. I'm right. It's the principle of the matter. All those stupid lines. Yeah.
Since it compared to breaching a dam, once that's broken, many times it can never be
repaired. Yes, that's a good thing too. Yeah, how important that is to know. Because once you do these things, sometimes what you say and what you do and how you act, even people who are supposed to cover over offense just can't. It's gone. You ruined it, right? Everything should be able to be restored, but sadly, often that it isn't. Okay, so this proverb is a really, really powerful proverb. But so what did you say? What's the solution? Yeah, just drop it, as he says. Drop the matter. It's not. Is it that important? If it's an eternal salvation thing, it might be. But if it's not an eternal salvation thing, just drop it. What's the big deal? Move on from there. Maybe you got your feelings hurt, your pride, which you shouldn't have pride anyway. You got your pride hurt or whatever. It's like, okay. Don't be so petty about it. Just move on, okay? And it's not that big of a deal in the bigger scheme of things. You're redeemed and loved by Christ. What more could you have, as you're going to hear in the sermon today? You're his treasured possession. What more could you want than that? So what that someone doesn't like how you did something, or got your pride hurt, okay? Another one on this. I forgot, no, the other one I meant to say, I'm sorry, I have to go back to the previous proverb again about a man who pays back evil for good. All right, I'll give you 5 seconds. See who can find Obadiah. In the Bible. It's in the Bible, yes. You got tabs. Well, you talked, though. You didn't find it. Yeah, you're looking at your phone. That's cheating, too. That's cheating. No phone lookers. We're starting a quarrel with you guys over here now. Okay, I mean, shame on you for doing that. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah. Obadiah 15. Who wants to read it? Since some of you are so good at with your tabs and because I didn't look it up. Anyone want to read it?
For the day of the Lord is near upon all the nations. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your deeds shall return on your own head.
Okay, that's the point. As you have done, it will be done unto you. Your deeds will return on your own head. What goes around comes around. You do evil, expect evil in return. And this is God saying that one. He says, he will pay back evil to those who have done evil. It's justice. He's not going to do evil, but he will affect his justice. As you have done, it will be done unto you. That was back in that previous proverb. I meant to say that one earlier just to see who could find Obadiah. Okay, moving on, we'll do, oh no, we can't. We're 10:32. All right, we'll start at verse 15 next week. Yeah, I'll start at verse 15 next week. Let me write this down where I left off. So that would be August. In 2 weeks, I'll be late because we have our voters meeting. In Houston. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once there. Okay, let's close with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for your word and the wisdom you give us through your word and how you teach us that, to promote love and to cover offenses and to be patient and kind and caring. We pray that you'll help us now and what we have learned, that by your Spirit you will lead us to do that which is pleasing in your sight, that when others see us, they may see you through us and see your love and your forgiveness in our lives. And we ask this in Jesus' precious name.